So, um, somebody asked me yesterday, what is the non-dualism of gravity and or something like that, and I pointed out that most physicists do not, or non-locality of gravity. Sorry, the Basil J. Hiley, the quantum physics professor, he emphasizes that most physicists do not accept non-locality, and I I noticed that people have I've noticed some physicists say that they talk about non-locality as if it's something you add on to classical gravity, and this is not what non-locality means. And so it's similar to non-dualism in non-Western philosophy. And so the basic idea is that at zero time before any measurement is made, there already is the future and the past overlapping. And this was first discovered by Louis de Broglie as his law of phase harmony when he was critiquing relativity from quantum physics. And it's just the basic idea of frequency, where he realized that the frequency goes up as the momentum goes up in quantum physics towards the speed of light for a particle, but then the time also goes up and gets bigger, which means it slows down according to relativity for a particle. And ever since Pythagoras, frequency is inverse to time as music theory. And so Louis de Broglie logically reasoned that there has to be a second clock from the future as a time reversed signal that's guiding all matter at the same time as matter's moving from the past to the future. You have the future moving back to the past. And so then Louis de Broglie's protege, Olivier Costa de Beauregard, he realized that if this is true, it explains spiritual phenomenon like or in the paranormal, like telekinesis and precognition and telepathy and various. And he wrote a book about this called Time, a Physical Magnitude. And his physics papers were studied by the CIA, and they in their research on the paranormal, they studied Olivier Costa de Beauregard. Now, he was arguing that the measurement is asymmetric on the macro scale, while the micro scale is invariant with a time reversal. So the precognition would be retrocausality. But what Basil J. Hiley is arguing is the opposite, that in fact the origin of the non-locality in quantum physics is due to asymmetric time and frequency. And so this is before the particle exists. And so the particle exists as a wave function, but it's not just a mathematical entity. There's actually a causal force that is pure time, and negative frequency. And so this non-locality is a ever-flowing information from the future. And the problem with Louis de Broglie, he was trying to argue for some kind of field, and that would be the equivalent of an ether. And so instead of the ether, what Roger Penrose calls fundamental time is actually what he calls proto-consciousness. So the non-locality is what is called non-dualism in non-Western philosophy. It's also called formless awareness. And this is also explained by Fields Medal math professor Alain Kahn. So the non-locality is pure information as discrete number of the future and the past. So you have negative frequency and positive frequency overlapping of the future and the past, or as time of inverse time overlapping. And the reason this exists is because it's a ratio that's invariant, but the simplest example would be when you have 2/3 and 3/2. So you have the 1 as the source of all number, but it's the 2 is the same spectrum or scale. So it has the same geometry. So you think of it as symmetric, but when you add the 3, then you have in one direction of the ratio it's G in music theory, and then in the other direction it's F as the undertone. But in terms of frequency as pitch, they're both the perfect fifth. And so you hear the same phase as frequency, you hear the same negative frequency and positive frequency at the same time. So you have the undertone and overtone at the same time. And this is proven empirically because we can listen faster than time frequency uncertainty, or what's called Fourier uncertainty. So in Western music theory, the assumption is that the sound has to have a medium as air, but that's assuming an external measurement of sound. Whereas in philosophy, in real music training, you rely on listening. And so the source of the listening turns out to be this proto-consciousness with the precognitive information of the future guiding the past. And then it flows as pure number, as a causal force that's before energy defined by amplitude or wavelength as magnitude, as a spatial wavelength. And this is explained in music theory because the only way the music theory could be converted to a wavelength as a symmetric wavelength was by covering up the fact that 2/3 is also a perfect fifth as an undertone, just as 3/2 is a perfect fifth as an overtone. And so this is what Gurdjieff called the law of 3 as objective music. And so what Philaeus did is he flipped his musical instrument around in order to change the 1 into 0 to 8 instead of 0 to 12. And then he could convert 2/3 as an undertone into 4/3 as a harmonic ratio, even though 4/3 cannot exist as an overtone because the denominator has a different, it's not a same pitch multiple of the 1. So because the denominator is a 3, it has a different frequency ratio to the 1 as a harmonic. So in order to be an overtone, it has to be a ratio with the 1 or a octave to the root tonic or fundamental pitch, the fundamental tone as the 1. So the source of the 1 turns out to be this non-commutative, non-local, and non-dual infinite resonance of the future and the past overlapping. And this is what you access through quantum biology as meditation. But it got covered up by Philolaus and Archytas and then turned into the square root of 2 for irrational magnitude as the foundation of Western science, and promoted by Plato and Socrates, and then picked up by Newton for the inverse square law of gravity and the calculus. And so it wasn't until quantum physics with the non-commutative photon absorption spectrum that this was rediscovered, this ancient truth was rediscovered by Heisenberg and then Alain, the Fields Mental Math professor, and Basil J. Hiley, the quantum physics professor. So that's just a little overview again. Thanks.